very much, and my congratulations to the organisers here for getting a fantastic meeting together. Now, I don't propose to tell you a lot about the detail of the cuts that are sweeping through our society. Many people with a great deal more expertise than I've got will be giving you the information that can help you campaign, help you convince others and draw them into activity during the course of the day. But I guess we all also know that you don't have to be an expert to know about this. All you have to be is an ordinary person living in this society, because on a daily basis we can see what is being done to destroy the welfare state that working people have relied on for more than a generation. We know what they're attempting to do to the education system. We know that there's an education system not safe in the hands of the Education Secretary, Michael Gove. We know what is intended for more further privatisation in the NHS. We know that this is the government that is reaching in to areas of society that were previously thought to be entirely beyond the reach of privatisation. Look at what is being done to the legal aid system in this country. It's not the first thing in most people's minds. It's not, I hope for most of us, the most pressing cut to the welfare state. But let's be clear, they are introducing a system where there will be one law for the rich and no law for the poor. What does it mean to say that the possible providers of your legal defence in the future could be Tesco, could be G4 Security? This is the same people who are running the privatised prisons will be providing you with your legal defence. Now, if that isn't a conflict of interest, I can't imagine what is. These are people who don't really have an interest in keeping you out of prison. They have an interest of putting you in there and taking the profits for treating you like an animal while you're there. So this is an entirely unacceptable government programme which has no legitimacy, no democratic legitimacy, because nobody voted for this government. Nobody voted for the Tory programme at the last election. They voted Labour, or they voted for a Liberal Party, which they thought actually in policy terms was to the left of Labour. So the vast majority of people did not vote for this. There is no democratic mandate for the austerity measures that this government is carrying through. So we have now to react to a situation where the vast majority of people in this country are utterly opposed to what the government is trying to inflict on them, and if we don't stop it now, there will not be a second chance. So we have to call into existence a movement on an absolutely enormous scale which hits this government with every weapon in its armoury. Every group of workers that strikes to defend the education system or the fire service or the postal service not only requires but demands, and rightly demands, the support of every single activist in the anti-austerity movement. We want another demonstration, like the magnificent demonstration in Manchester, which demonstrates beyond all possible doubt that the people carrying through the austerity programme are a tiny island of hideous privilege in a vast sea of ordinary people who do not accept what is being done to the welfare state. We want to see direct action on a wholly different scale than anything that we've seen before, because we want to say to this government, if you make our lives unbearable, we will make this society ungovernable for the rich and the powerful and the 18 out of 23 millionaires that sit in the cabinet at this current time. That's our objective. That's why we set up the People's Assembly, and we can only do that. We can only move on that scale. We can only create a movement like that if we are all in the movement together. If it is from every political party, every progressive political party in this country, every union in this country, every campaign in this country, all together. Because I pay tribute to all the local campaigns, the Whittington Hospital campaign, a magnificent campaign, the Lewisham Hospital campaign, the Barnet campaign that we've heard from. But those people have joined the People's Assembly because we know that although you have to fight every single cut as it arrives, as it confronts us, there is one source for all of them. There is one place where this is all coming from, and we want it halted at source. We want to stop it where we can, but we want to halt it at source. Because we're not having a not in my back garden cuts campaign. It's not all right if we save the Lewisham and it happens in some other hospital down the road. It's not all right if we stop it in Barnet, but it happens in Southwark. That's not all right. It's not all right if we stop the cuts to the health service, but they punish immigrants and pursue a policy of divide and rule. That's not all right. There is only one policy which is all right, and that is no cuts, not now, not in the future, not to any section of this society, not to any part of the welfare state. That's the only policy that will work, that will prevent them from dividing and ruling, and it's the only policy worth fighting for, and it's what the People's Assembly pledged at its launch that it stood for. No cuts. Not from this government, not from any government, not from any possible future, because we can't afford it. You can't afford to live like this. You know, my experience won't be the worst in the room. It won't be the worst in London. It certainly won't be the worst in the country. But in a single week, when you turn on the television and see a 10% hike in your energy bill this winter, you know you're just about to lose hundreds of pounds that you can ill afford to lose, and some people can't afford at all. You know that's going to happen to you. In the same week, I went for a routine blood test at the Homerton Hospital. I went to the blood test, and they give you, the little deli ticket that you pull off the reel. So I pulled mine off. It's number 48. I look at the display. It says number 75. So I said to the woman on the reception, I said, is this counting down? Is it going down? 74, and it'll get to 48. She said, no, it's counting up. It's going to get to 100, and then it's going to start again from 1 to 100. There were 60-odd people ahead of me in the queue, 2.5 hours to have a routine blood test. So don't let Jeremy Hunt tell you that they're not cutting the health service. They damn well are cutting the health service. What does it mean to say that a large percentage of the population can't afford a train journey? Can't afford a single train journey? If I go 100 miles outside London to see my mother on her birthday this week, that is my weekly disposable income gone in a single train journey. And lots of people can't afford at all to travel on the privatised train network. This is not a society which is worth anything other than our total opposition to transform the lives of ordinary working people. And that's what we're pledged to do. And you know, when they tell you protest doesn't work or it isn't popular, think about this. When Owen Jones got on Question Time this week and said some of the things that he said today, it gets an absolutely huge public response. Everybody knows from the audience, from millions of people watching it on television, that he's right, and they want what he says to be done. For God's sake, when Russell Brand goes and calls for a revolution, 2.5 million people have watched it on YouTube. So don't tell us this isn't popular. Nothing of the miserable patrician condescension from Jeremy Paxman cut with that audience. The call for a revolution cut with that audience. So we have a popular support for this campaign. But popular support and being organised are two different things. And we have to organise and we have to fight back. And if we don't do this, it won't be just one disaster in Grangemouth. I mean, what does it mean? Jim Ratcliffe, the owner of that plant, the man who locked those workers out, for a single worker in London, on the average London wage, and many people are below the average London wage, it would take them 50 years, a lifetime, of a working wage to buy his yacht. Then what does it mean when a person like that can threaten 800 workers with redundancy? That's got to stop. It's got to stop. I congratulate United Union for proposing that there should be an occupation of that plant. I regret that that occupation wasn't supported. But I tell you what, it's not just about what happens in the unions. It's about what all of us do. We have to create a climate where it's automatic that if someone like that comes after those people's jobs, they feel that there is public support, mass demonstrations, and an automatic right to defend themselves and to fight back. It's their jobs, it's their livelihood. It shouldn't be taken away from them by somebody bobbing about in the Mediterranean Sea on £130 million worth of yachts. So let's start work. Protest can win. Look what we did to this government over Syria. If it weren't for persistence, if it weren't for campaigning, if it weren't for 10 years of anti-war activity, I'll tell you what will be happening now. Tomahawk cruise missiles will be falling on Damascus, and every one of them cost the same amount as an NHS hospital ward. We'll be watching not just death and destruction in Damascus, but the destruction of the resources of our own welfare state here. But we stopped that. We created a public opinion that over 10 years refused to bow to the warmongers and put David Cameron in the situation where for the first time since 1782 a British Prime Minister went to the House of Commons, asked for a vote for war and didn't get it. Now that didn't come from nowhere. It came people like us in campaigns like this put a stop to it, and we can put a stop to austerity as well. Make sure that November the 5th is something that they never, never forget.